You all have so far analyzed an issue using the root cause technique, put the ideas on strips of paper. Your strips of paper were largely clustered because you kind of had a visual diagram, but you could move them around, right? You selected the top 4. If you could wave a magic wand, these are the 4 that if these got better, man, I know my outcome would move, right? And then I forced ranked them. You said, if I had to choose, this is the number 1. This has got to move, right? It gets kind of hard because it's not that easy, but we tried. Now what you have as a result is one person has your 1 through 4, and then various team members have those cluster piles. They know what's underneath, right? The other ideas that were there, okay? And we're going to all go to the common cause board and do a common cause analysis and logic model. So this is our last exercise of the training class, and I'm pleased for you that it was fairly easy to facilitate a group analysis on a new problem using different tools, and it went pretty smoothly. I think you're getting very comfortable with how to use these tools and think about adapting them and just going with how it works. So we had 4 teams, and each of you had a color, right? So we had Team Blue, which was working on high school graduation, correct? We had Team Orange working on teen pregnancy. We had Team Red working on substance abuse, and Team Green working on homeless youth. This is the first time we've done analysis really outside of the substance abuse because we've been working on our own issues for the whole day and a half cream up until now. All right. We did this analysis because we think there's common cause in here somewhere. This is where I'm going to knock on wood. Okay, there's common cause in here somewhere. I have no idea what you guys are going to brainstorm. And this isn't for one community. That's the other challenge. When you're brainstorming common cause within one community, it is highly likely that you'll identify similar variables because you're operating in the same context, right? This is a thought exercise with no community in particular. Everybody was in Whoville, right? It could have been anywhere. And so we'll see if we still come up with similar opportunities and points of connection, all right? The way it's going to start is we asked each of you to prioritize, that if you could wave a magic wand over one of your conditions, boy, if that got better, it would really move my outcome. And we named 4. So you have your top 4 priorities, right? I'm going to start by asking teams to just share priority number 1, and we'll work with that. So Team Blue, for high school graduation, what was one thing that if you could wave the magic wand, the number 1 thing, it would really work?
We would increase value in a high school graduation diploma.
Make it worth more. Great.
Okay.
Increase value of graduation. Was graduation a theme or an issue in anyone else's analysis? Did any other team have anything related to high school graduation? No? All right. Team number 2, Orange, teen pregnancy. What was the one thing if you could wave a magic wand? Number 2, family management. Anybody here very concerned about family management and how the home is run and how critical that is to your outcome from other groups? Yes. What did you have?
Poverty, meeting family needs, homelessness, or migrant workers or transient workers, things like that. That was
on the home management piece. Which one was that, please? Just give me that one.
Stable home.
Stable home. Could I have that one, please? Stable home, please. Would you put stable home with family management? Did anybody else have something related to stable home and family management? Yes. Team Green. What did you have?
We had domestic violence, teen pregnancy, abuse, neglect, life
Okay.
skills.
Could I have your abuse and neglect, family management? That's really true family management. I'll take that. Thank you. Family management. Put that with that one, please. Any others?
You want life skills in there?
Life skills related to like the understanding teaching how to family management, or general life skills separate from that? I'm not clear. Help me out.
Life skills to be able to raise your kids.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Parenting skills. Sure.
Okay.
Parenting skills.
Okay.
All right. This is family management. What? Having some tape management issues?
Tape management issues.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Now, I have a separate that here, separate from family whoop, wait a minute. We got a little more family management here.
We got no role model for healthy relationships and lack of supervision.
Okay. I'm going to take both of those.
That's where we kept it.
I'm going to put that with that cluster, if you would, both of these. But I'm going to explore the question you just raised, if you don't mind. You said violence, right? Domestic violence in particular. Did anybody else have violence and domestic violence and abuse, that kind of thread within family management? Yes.
Trauma-informed care, trauma.
Trauma-informed care. And you all had?
home.
Abusive home. And you guys had one as well. Your abusive home, the domestic violence piece of it. Thank you. Separate those into a separate cluster for me, if you would, instead of...
Separate?
Yeah, so we've gone up here, it's family management. We're going to have one around violence in the family. It's slightly different. Okay? All right. Okay. There it is. Okay. I'll go ahead and take that under family management, please. I'll take a piece for family management and add it to our pile. Thank you. All right. So this is our cluster related to family management. Here I'm talking about the skills of parenting and the managing of that family conflict, that kind of thing. And then we have a separate cluster below that, which has to do with violence in the home. Abusive, right? Trauma, those kinds of issues. So I'm distinguishing between the two. They seem to be similar, but different enough to matter.
Neglect be under there as well?
Potentially. Let's hang on and see. Let's go to Team Red. Team Red, what was your number one?
Legal.
That the substance is legal. By the way, they're working on caffeine. Powdered caffeine. And the overdose and death coming from powdered caffeine. Legal substance. Did anybody else have, I don't think you had caffeine and legal caffeine to your unique piece. Okay, then we're going to go to Green. Green, what was your number one?
We had economic situations.
Okay, economics to mean poverty, unemployment. Is that what I'm understanding with that? Okay, good. Yeah, give me way down there. Good. Anybody else have economics, poverty? Generational poverty, family needs.
You can get a job without a high school diploma.
All right, got it. Okay, so we cluster those around the economics piece for me. Okay.
For legal, that probably should have been in.
Oh, yeah.
We have one that's a little different as well.
It's a different one than that.
I heard it. Is a way out because then they have access to
Services and care, et cetera, they otherwise may not. Okay. All right. I'm going to come back to that theme because I think folks have things along that line. Okay, so we've got the number one, just the one thing, if you could wave a magic wand, if we could change that thing, a group completely unrelated to your issue, largely, and often in the community completely siloed in where they're working on it. High school graduation and education success, and teachers are over here, and school reform, and right, Common Core, all of that debate's over here. And then over here is substance abuse, very worried about families, what's happening, right? Somewhat connected, somewhat friendly, with more overlap, often is the group working on teen pregnancy, right? Okay, and then often, in a completely different system of care is homelessness, right? And the organization working on that. So we take those four, and none of you are even from the same community, and we weren't even working on the same community. And take a look at what's on the wall already. We haven't gotten past number one. Now, note, what do you see? We see a couple of things, legitimate and specific. We're concerned about legality of certain drugs. There's no FDA regulation. There's nothing around this thing on caffeine. A very legitimate, specific concern. Not a lot of overlap yet on that one. But orange shows up elsewhere already. I'm sorry, red shows up elsewhere already, right? Everyone's very concerned about family management. Like, if we don't get a handle on this in our community, on the effectiveness of family and of parenting skills, none of the issues we care about are going to change. Where's that table in your community where across coalitions and provider networks this issue is being understood? Right? Do you have one? Some communities do, some don't, right? Yeah?
It's headed by the Department of Family Services.
Right.
They pull all these.
Right, so there's a table, good. There's a table in the community. Many communities, there is no table like that cuts across, right? And does your coalition have a seat at that table? And to think about the relationship between your work and theirs. And how much of it does it help you go, oh, good, quote unquote, that's covered, right? There's a place for that, there's strategies, there's funding. On my map of what needs to be addressed, I can put in who's doing that. And that's maybe not going to be my number one priority, but I'm linking with those for whose it is to make sure it happens, right? And then we're keeping track of it. Might be one possible of many combinations of how that could play out. All right, let's go to number 2. Team Blue, what's your number 2? It's on there already.
Oh.
Yep.
Your number 2?
Stable home.
Their number 2 was Orange's number 1. So that's already up there.
Oh, literally.
Literally, we've already covered number 2. Yeah. Right. So at the highest level of priority, there's extreme overlap between those two issues in a way that needs to be discussed. Great. Team Orange, your number 2.
Behavioral health.
Behavioral health.
And mental health disorders.
Okay. Unpack that a tad bit for me.
What?
Unpack that a tad bit for me. What's underneath behavioral health? Because you gave me another 6 for 1. Behavioral health.
They're all right here.
They're over here.
Okay, talk about them. Talk about them briefly.
Substance abuse, recovery-oriented systems of care, underage drinking, and limited funding for prevention.
Limited funding for prevention. Okay. If you don't mind, give me 2 of those that would help. Go with limited funding and prevention, right? And substance abuse. Yep, yeah. These two that kind of help us understand that issue. If you put that together just so we unpack those complex words. So who has something specific to or concern about funding of prevention? Did that come up in yours? What did it say?
Mental health issues, addiction issues, health and wellness.
Yep,
general.
okay. I'm going to give you addiction issues there. I'm going to ask you to keep that one just for a second because I think we can explore it further. Cuts to school health. I'll put that one here. Anyone else? Yes.
Feel more alert, more awake under substance abuse.
Okay.
We have a no comprehensive health education.
Okay.
So we have that.
I'm gonna ask to separate that one out. I like that, if you don't mind. We've got cuts to school health. What I mean by is common cause. Not that I like the
I got it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Let's pull out cuts to school health and put no comprehensive health curriculum as a separate cluster for me.
Like our number 4.
Yes.
We have both mental health and drugs as two of our main problems with schizophrenia, depression.
I'll take schizophrenia and depression to go under mental health if you don't mind, and I'll move the
Do you
other
want my
ones.
mental health one
I'm
too?
going. Yep. I know that when you're doing common cause, what you're going to find is that your entire issue is someone else's cause, right? Homelessness, substance abuse, right? And so in that case, when we talked about the levels of common cause before the break, we talked about common cause in terms of outcomes. You got an opportunity there to connect in ways that often suggest opportunities for joint funding, high-level strategy alignment, right? When you dig down a layer and you've got common cause around diagnosis, right? You got another level of point of connection in terms of where the organizations can connect or how the strategies can connect, right? Because I have no doubt that each of these feeds the other in the big sense. Homelessness is driven by substance abuse. Substance abuse has homelessness as an issue. I mean, it goes back and forth, that chicken and egg to a certain extent. All right. So now we've gotten past a little bit past the number ones into some of the number twos. I see somebody's number 4 up there, or did somebody change their mind? That is not. Is that their number 4? It is. Great. So we're already getting to other people's priorities. Did we do red's number 2? Not yet. Red number 2.
Easy access. That powdered caffeine is available on the internet.
Okay. Easy access. Start me a new spot over here. Anybody else concerned about the easy access to drugs? Or is this also specific? Looks like it might be specific. Okay. Great. Team Green, what was your number 2?
Our number 2 was drugs.
If you would please, put that up here. And I want you to pull substance abuse off separately and put it down here and go ahead and put drugs with it. Thank you. All right. Anything else along those lines from?
Addiction issues, what it was found with
Let's move addiction issues down. Not to separate things that are intricately connected, but to recognize particular points of connection. All right.
Feel more alert and awake would make more sense now.
I would too. You're right.
Powder cocaine is because of standardized testing in schools and the pressures they encounter.
Interesting. Okay, so to get ready for school performance, good.
Performance enhancers, academic and athletic performance.
Yes, I want that as a cluster, very much so. Give me a new one with that one. And this is where I need to start pulling in some things.
Low end folding.
Thank you, dear.
Do you want low end
Okay.
Do you want to
I have like
these going
repetition
to?
We're going to add 1 or 2 more things and stop just for a second here, if that's all right. All right. Now, let's talk practically about 2 things at the same time, both the picture you see emerging and how you manage the picture when you're facilitating it, okay? So let's talk about the picture that's emerging first. The point of this is if you color code, people immediately see the relationship. You don't even have to see the words, but from where you're sitting, all this way back, right? I immediately see where, in at least 4 instances, all 4 of you should at some point be in the same room having a conversation. In whatever way that's functional. Action team level, staff getting together and thinking about who should we bring together to plan, right? And you legitimately have some very specific issues that also must be advanced. And this is where we have that constant conversation about what's necessary and what's sufficient. One of the things that we have to become comfortable with is that all of our coalitions are largely necessary, but often insufficient. You must be active. You must have a substance abuse specific coalition. That is absolutely necessary, but often it's not sufficient to the outcome we want, hence common cause, hence working and aligning with other coalitions, helping them understand why we're critical to their outcome and why they need a substance abuse specific response in their community, right? necessary but not sufficient. And that can be hard to be comfortable with, because when we go to funders, we argue we're it. We're the answer, right? We're the problem and the answer. That's the whole framework for arguing for funding. It's very difficult to go to funder and say, we are critical and active ingredient. If you didn't have us, you wouldn't get an outcome, but we're not sufficient to produce your outcome. That's the honest answer. And one of the few ways you can have that kind of honest conversation with a local funder, whether it's county council or a board or a foundation, is to do it in partnership with other coalitions. Remember my comment before the break about being thrown out of, since we're on camera, I won't say which organization, Fortune 500 company, where they threw me out and said, when your coalitions in this community have figured out who they are to each other, then come back to me. In the meantime, just stop sending in little ducks one after another asking for money. I'm tired of it, right? So one way to break that cycle here and set up a legitimate, necessary, but not sufficient, but together we're sufficient argument, right, is to have this kind of picture. Now, let's talk about managing these ideas. I think we all can agree that common cause is a powerful opportunity for sustainability and for impact, right? We can all, I hope, become comfortable with the fact that common cause is not threatening to our existence as a substance abuse coalition. Our communities need one, right? But this can make us more powerful. And if we accept those assumptions, now let's talk about how are we going to manage this? So if you saw these points of potential connection, go back to the coalition table you were at, pretend like you really were a coalition. How might you act on these points of connection? What would we do to not just find common cause, but act in common for the cause?
Start with learning about what the other organizations are doing.
Number one, we've got a steep learning curve. This is the old Covey principle, right? Seek first to understand, then to be understood, right? So we're going to have to go and learn something about an issue that may not be our own and do some homework. Or a friend of mine from Kansas, who's since retired, Max Wilson's old adage, sometimes you just have to do butt time. There's a certain amount of time your butt has to be in someone else's seat, at their table, listening and understanding, in order to bring them to your table to participate effectively. Okay, good. So number one, we have to learn. What else could we do? Let's be practical. What are we going to do with this potential idea here? There's common cause, now what?
Probably there's strategies that we're already both implementing that we could do together.
Excellent. So now we found a place that within all of our planning documents, where different funders require different formats because they operate in a different system than we do, all those barriers to just natural collaboration, we can say, dig through and find this. Bring it out in a way we can all see, and let's see where our connections are, right? Regardless of funding stream, regardless of the language that's used, what strategies are you doing? Are we doing them? Yes?
We do resources, like finding out how you can share resources, you know.
Yes, exactly. How do we maximize? You've got one, I've got two. How do we make that add up to 4? We often can, right? And so now this has to do a degree of trust that has to be built. Let's be very clear that these things, all of these things are powered by relationships and they move at the speed of trust. All of your work is powered by relationships and moves at the speed of trust. And when you start talking about being honest about how much resources you have and how many resources they have, whether that's volunteers and key leaders and skills and talent or money, these are high trust conversations. Probably gonna have to build that trust before you start going there. But your willingness to be trustworthy and to show that information can be a phenomenal first step to having a real conversation about the fact that if we blend this funding with that funding and together, we might be able to actually have half an FTE when otherwise nobody could afford it. And have we done the organizational homework to support such a venture? That's a high trust, high thing to pull off. Many communities have a history of it though. You've got examples of success, you've done it before. Something that John Kanya, the author of the original Collective Impact article, says all the time, and I love it. I haven't been to a single training with him or trained with him when he didn't say it, which is none of this is counterintuitive. It's just all completely countercultural. This all makes perfect common sense. Yes, we should do that, but it's not how we work together. And it's often not how we work together because of certain rules or habits or just structures that we haven't questioned and then made work better for us, right? This is not counterintuitive, but it is completely countercultural for most communities. What else might you practically do to act on this? Yes?
Establish the value your organization plays in the movement, because a lot of times the individuals around the table don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
They think, good job for what you're doing, go do it.
Yeah.
That's your job.
Right.
And they don't see that connection.
Yes.
So a lot of times after that trust is built, then it's what value you bring to the table to establish.
Yes. So if we're all concerned about family management, it was their number one, it was Blue's number 2, and everyone had some stake here in it, right? Clearly, our work is instrumental to some of our organization's success. We're not just friends or friendly, right? We're not just allies in the community who will at times show up behind them at their news conference so there's lots of people and we look good, right? We have a substantive stake that if we don't do well, they won't do well. That's a hard mutual dependency perspective to be in. 2 thoughts here and then over there. Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking that this is also one of those pictures that we can make a bigger impact in advocacy at this picture, because if we all get on the same page, and of course that if
Yes.
trust is built and
Right.
whatnot, we've been put against each other for so long in competition for funding
Mm-hmm.
that in this we could bring more funding and actually make a better case to, especially I'm thinking our state legislatures and saying, listen, this group, I'm coming to, well, you're substance abuse. Why are you sitting here with the teen pregnancy people? Why
Right.
do you want them to have funding? Well, because they're essential
Mm-hmm.
for our community to continue to function and for my work to continue.
Yes.
And we can't make that argument until we sit and do
This homework.
together.
Yes. If you do this together and bring this analysis, imagine turning, let's say we completed this exercise and then people got the chance to move it even more and then start moving them in relationship to cause, right? Turn it into a logic model. And then you were to do a metaform, a common cause, what's called issue integrated logic modeling. You would start seeing, and if you color-coded it or did it in a creative way, you would start seeing each has an essential role to a common outcome, that you've done that homework and we're going to funders, you've got constituency to argue for the common core, for what's across all of these things that must be done, right? I think there's great opportunity in that. There's great vulnerability, there's risk, I think there's great opportunity.
Well, I mean, we're in a state where we're always focused on the issue itself, but not the overall impact of what we can do for children and families.
Yes.
We want to be, and we have this theoretical, oh yeah, we want families and children, and that
Right.
we want the best for.
Right.
But it's with teen pregnancy, domestic violence.
Yes.
And we fought that in our legislature this year, and if we had done it this way, it'd been different.
But it might have been different, could have been more data-based and logical, as well as constituency, that there is more people around this circle than there was at each of the circles before at the table level, right? There's constituency, there's opportunity to advocate, right, with potentially more effect, all right, or to explain a rationale and educate than we couldn't have done alone. I promised over here next. Yes?
Recognize and discuss where the gaps are.
Yeah.
And how to go about
Yep.
webbing together to
Yeah.
fill those gaps.
Because when we did the what are you actually doing strategy question that came up earlier, let's look at our strategies and where they align, there's going to be a whole lot of we wish we had, but no one's actually doing it. Like no one in the community. Everyone's left that off their list. It's just not being got to by anybody. Invariably, there'll be gaps. Good. Yes?
To that,
And then
there's
I'm sorry.
duplication, so if there's somebody's like, well, I can't take that on, it's
Right.
like, but if we're both doing the same thing, maybe somebody will be like, well, let me do all those, and then you can
Right.
take this
Yes.
other thing that's the gap.
We can get some efficiencies. We can talk about duplication. We can talk about that in some cases duplication is good. Great. You've got them during school. I got them after school. We'll be on the same message. We'll get more. We'll get what we need. Other cases duplication is very bad, right? It's a waste of resources, and we don't have very many. So who, right, can pony up and make that happen? Great. Yes.
The triethnic community readiness
Yes.
survey.
Mm-hmm. Be a good thing to go to. Yes. Think about community readiness. Do the survey and think about that across these issues, right? Sometimes you can ride other people's coattails, and sometimes they can ride yours based on community willingness and readiness to address an issue or a teachable moment or a catalytic event. If you've done this homework in advance and the event you never want to have happen but somehow always eventually does, right? The extreme consequence, the one that makes the news, right? If you've done this homework, you know when and where to show up and explain to the community how you fit and why you're there. Someone else's teachable moment becomes your the coattails you can ride, and vice versa. Makes sense? Right? There are so many ways in which this practically plays out in the choices we make, how we spend our money, what we choose to do, how we communicate to the community what our issue is and why it needs action, who our friends are. It just plays out on every level of effective coalition work. None of it's possible if you haven't done your own homework. I think substance use coalitions, more than most, have done their homework. They've been asked over and over again, analyze, get clear, drive strategies, right? Complement with environmental strategies. We just got generations of research, right, that we've been standing on. And so I think we're prepared to lead the homework. And so not only to lead it within your own coalition, but to contribute that skill, that perspective, to other coalitions that might benefit from it as you do a common cause. Any thoughts or reaction to this? Yes?
A facilitation question. and
Yes.
Maybe I'm jumping to where you're heading, but so thinking ahead to use this in the community, because my director actually does run the family. We have a
Mhm.
communities for
Mhm.
People show up that, I don't wanna say are uninvited, but come because of the reputation of what gets done.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I'm thinking, okay, facilitating that, is it an acceptable facilitation skill to have this up and then ask the group, how do you wanna address it?
Yes.
Okay.
And how do you want to organize it?
Okay.
So for example, normally the question process has a visualization step, right? Bubble chart, waffle diagram, ABC window, right? They all have some way to organize the group results. This one simply asks people to get it up, then they've got to organize it. So sometimes you can ask everybody to go, what's left and what's right? What's upstream, what's downstream? Just anything that helps them start organizing the logic and connection between these ideas, right? Having groups begin to say, and that's why I had pens here that were color-coded to the groups, right? Well, who's leading this effort? This cluster is being led by green. Circle it in green. You can do things like that, but you're going to have to ask them to put some logical order to these ideas. And you can see several ways of doing that, right? And then, yes, you're going to definitely have to take it to the next step in terms around what are you currently doing and planning, et cetera. But we were introducing common cause generally and collective impact to WASA. You know, one thing they did several years ago was combine 5 groups into one around substance abuse. Not easy, but they really recognized that they needed to do that. The results have been fantastic, but those were hard conversations. I'm not saying all these conversations are going to be easy, right? But I thought that was very well managed in Wausau, and everybody came up standing. At the end, everybody came up well, right? And it really did serve well.
2 years of growing pains.
Yep, big change. But the same, can you just even in that, just in substance abuse, not getting across other issues yet, just in substance abuse, that happened to create a much more powerful coalition, much more capable coalition than before had not. And no one had just ever called the question. I thought that was an enormous act of brave leadership in a community that's very hard to pull off and laudable and a good example. Then they're asking the question across coalitions, how do we fit and how do we align in space, et cetera. We could have done the whole 2 days starting here, right? We could have started here with common cause to a certain extent and built out from here more around the question of collective impact across issues. But our purpose for the last day and a half, to 2 days now, was to review the fundamentals of analysis. Get comfortable with enough tools that it's easy to learn, because the next tools that you learn are that much easier. Like, oh, okay, it's just this kind of question, and I can kind of see, right? It's a lot easier to pick them up, build out the toolbox. Get comfortable with how you might sequence them, which ones are the right ones at the right time. There's not one hammer and everything's a nail, which is one of the problems we're having coming out of the academy when people had deep experience with the root cause technique, and by God, everything was going to use this technique, right? Okay, and without being a little more facile, a little more adept, a little more artistic in choosing what's out of the toolbox, right? We got that covered yesterday and through part of today. And then to say it's not only to our own benefit in our own coalition, clarity, precision, alignment of strategies, a framework in which to measure, and that we can translate those into pictures the whole community can use. I love the gallery, right? It was a hard thing to vote on, wasn't it? What's interesting is everybody got a vote almost. Seriously, everyone's like, oh, I like this one, I like that one. There's a lot of good ideas. And we hadn't even really gotten to the having enough time to really produce something more creative. But we can create powerful visuals that communicate to people the complexity of our issue without overwhelming them and inviting them to inform it and to act on it. That's a major accomplishment for our coalition to achieve. And then to use that to dance well with others, to play with others in the sandbox, the other coalitions in our community, yet another level of leadership task that benefits from this homework. So I hope the day and a half to 2 days was worth your time. I hope this closing activity helped you think not only internally, but how then it sets the stage for external work, and that this addresses some of the core leadership challenges you're experiencing as coalition directors in getting momentum and ownership and understanding, getting the real value out of who's coming to the table. Are they helping you understand? Can they show and add to the picture? Are they aligned in their interests and taking action? And are you able to connect well with your peers in your community? I think these are key leadership challenges that I hope this class helped with in a practical way.